Welcome to the Upside Down Kingdom.
Hey there, welcome to the sermon preview for this week. Glad you're joining us for a second. I've got a new guest with me here today. This is Morgan Rich. She is interning with us for this summer. We're really excited to have her here a couple days a week. Morgan, tell us, what is the thing that you're most excited about?
Well, it's a basic answer, but I'm just really excited to learn what goes on in the background of church and also just ministry.
Yeah, very cool. We're excited for her to come and learn and what God has in store for her and is equipping her for the future. So really excited for that. All right, for the sermon this week, we're going to be continuing on in our regular series. But before we get to that, there's something really exciting happening this weekend. We've been waiting for it since last summer. Morgan, what is happening this Saturday?
This Saturday is Church at the Cabin.
Church at the Cabin.
Yeah.
4 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so for this Saturday, we've got some really exciting things planned. There is going to be a taco truck.
Mm-hmm.
A taco truck. There are going to be inflatables for the children. And there's going to be a worship service starting at 6 o'clock. So some really cool things. 4 o'clock, come, let the kids play, fellowship, all these things. And then around 4:30, 4:45-ish or so, we'll start eating, then worship service at 6 o'clock. So I'm really excited about that. When you do come, plan to bring a side or dessert. So we have tacos as our main meal, and then a side and dessert to go with it. Sounds like we're going to have some pretty good chips and salsa with it as well.
That sounds good.
Not to make it any more enticing to come, but it's going to be great. So for the worship service, we will be continuing on in our regular sermon series that we have been in. So Morgan, what have we been talking about lately?
We've been talking about the Sermon on the Mount.
Yes, Sermon on the Mount, Upside Down Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen how Jesus has just really flipped expectations upside down, and none more so than last week where we talked about loving your enemy, and just this radical idea of I should love and pray for my enemy, as opposed to hating my enemy, right? And so some really convicting things that come from that. So great stuff. So this week we're moving into a new section in which Jesus is, the past section we were looking a little bit at this idea, these examples of what a true or greater righteousness was. And now this section we're going to be looking at how does that greater righteousness play out in our worship, in our everyday coming and going in that way. So we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 6. So we're flipping over to chapter 6, and we're going to skip around a little bit, okay? So we're going to start in verse 1 and go to verse 6. Then we're going to skip some verses and go to 16 through 18, okay? And the reason we're doing that is because there's a bigger section in there that has the Lord's Prayer. We're going to spend a couple weeks specifically in the Lord's Prayer. So we're going to look at some things around that and then come back and hit the Lord's Prayer. So in this passage, we see 3 different things that Jesus is talking about. He's talking about giving to the needy, prayer, and fasting. So Morgan, as you think about these 3 things, what do these 3 things have in common?
Okay, so when I think of giving to the needy, prayer, and fasting, I think of worship and just recognizing that our intentions on doing those 3 things all look up to God and what would God intend for us.
Yeah, really good. So they're all 3 in active worship, right? Giving to the needy, prayer, fasting, they're all in their own unique way. They're an act of worship.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what we see, what Jesus calls the hypocrites, is they have something else in mind. They're doing it for a different reason. As you were looking at the passage, what were their reasons, or where did they go wrong?
Yeah, so where they went wrong was they did it for attention, and they did it for validation from others and not from God.
Yeah, right. So like we had even phrases of like to be seen by others, to be heard by others, and instead is God, Jesus is saying this like your Father wants you to do these things for Him. This whole idea of these are acts of worship to align our heart with Him. And so some really great passages that really get down to the heart of what are our motives in our worship. And giving to the needy, prayer and fasting, those are really just examples that give us a good idea of what Jesus is talking about here, because there's other ways of worshiping too, and other ways that we have to identify and evaluate ourselves of, okay, what are my motives here? Am I doing this for the Lord? Am I doing this for the Father? Or am I doing it to be seen by others? So a really convicting passage.
Definitely.
It's the Sermon on the Mount. Like what of it is not convicting? But this really is convicting because as you and I were talking about before, like we live in such a world where we seek approval from other people, and that we also find that in the church, right?
Definitely.
We know we should be seeking approval from God, but we're seeking approval from other people, and that happens in our worship too. So, Church at the Cabin this Saturday. We will also have a service on Sunday. It's going to be a short service, reflection, prayer, worship, and music. A really, really great time. Really encourage you to come to that as well. Make it to both. It's a great time to reflect and just quiet our hearts before the Lord. So, Church at the Cabin this week. As you're preparing for Saturday, for the sermon on Saturday, be thinking about this idea of what are your motives in your worship. As you are worshiping, what motives do you have? Is it for other people or is it for God? I think that's really important for us to figure out for ourselves as we seek to further live into God's plan for us. So, looking forward to it. We'll see you then. Take care.
In his upside down kingdom, the king laid down his crown for the cross. He chose to give his life for the lost and the broken souls. He's coming to take us home.